For the month of June, it will help us identify which mode we are operating in. And I've done this series before, but I felt I had a whole nother talk written, but I decided to redo this one because I really think that it's so important for us to really deepen into this. So these are different modes that we operate in. We operate in surviving, we operate in striving, or we can operate in thriving. So the entire month is going to be devoted to moving from wherever you are, if you're in that surviving mode, up into a thriving mode. Thriving. So many of us have spent what seems like a lifetime just trying to survive, it feels like, a lot of the time. And the heck with being a full expression of life, or trying to pursue happiness. Those would be real luxuries. Those would be luxuries. We're just trying to survive. The place of surviving is certainly not very free. It's not a very free or independent place. But I think we've all been there at some point in our lives. Perhaps some of us are there right now. The one thing I do know about being in that place is there is no room for God. There's no room for God there. At some point in our journey of unfoldment, which is why we gather here, why we take these incredible classes, why we come together in community, is to unfold into the wonderful place of knowing all is well. That God is our source and supply. So striving to make our lives turns out to be the way we want it. We strive. That's not the survival, it's the striving mode, where we are pursuing life, liberty, and happiness, and trying, notice that, trying to force to make them happen. We strive to be better. We strive, it feels like force, which is resistance. And many of us have been very successful operating in that mode of striving. And there may be some independence there, but it can be very burdensome. And again, not a whole lot of room for God in there. Not a whole lot of room. But there is yet another way to be. And that's what we're going to be exploring this whole month. And that is to thrive. To really feel that whole quality of thriving in life, which really is our birthright, because you see it as you know, and I always go back to the babies, because babies, I don't care how they're born, they're always thriving. Even when they appear not to be, they are. That's why we are giving a third of our proceeds from our fundraiser to that neonatal, because as most of you know, I have twin grandsons who I was with yesterday who just turned 2 years old. One was 1 pound 12 ounces and the other was 2 pound 4 ounces, and they are thriving, okay? Even when they looked like they were struggling, that was in our eyes. That is in our eyes when we go into the neonatal and we see a sick child. It's in those babies are there thriving, whether we know it or not, because their souls, their essence are alive. They're alive and within them, and it's always God's good pleasure to thrive. He cannot know anything else. Okay, so we're going to explore what all this means during the next 5 weeks, and I'm really, really glad that you were all here this morning, because this is the foundation for the whole series. We're going to kick it off. You're on the ground floor, so no matter where you are, you're in your perfect place. No matter which of those modes of operation that you're in your perfect place. So today we lay the foundation for our series by looking at what it means to be in the mode of surviving, what it means to be in the mode of striving, and then what it means to be in the mode of really thriving. And more importantly than what it means is right where you are in your life, to recognize where you are, to know what stage you're in. Because a lot of us are sleepwalking through life and are not aware, or the most everyone here, you wouldn't be here if you were not aware. You were pulled into this awareness by virtue of your showing up today. So it's so important for us to be aware which mode we are operating on, because then we can move upward. Up, up, up. Yes. I love the terms in consciousness that are coined by Mary Morrissey, and in exploring her book, The Field of Dreams, she has it with why me, by me, through me, and as me. We're going to go into these. These terms fit our surviving, our striving, and our thriving mode for the whole month. And if you really want to dig deep into this whole unfoldment of what mode you're in and how you can have your life be richer, fuller, more fulfilling, sign up for our Prosperity Plus class, because it's more than just tithing of money. It is really exploring how we can live fully. The whole 10-week class has been written by Mary Morrissey. That's what triggered that for me. And so I know that is a class that just totally I did a 360. Can you do a 360? No, 180? I did one of those degrees. And my whole life totally shifted.
Sure did.
Oh my gosh. Well, last time I did this almost 3 years ago, my whole life is like totally different. So much better. So much better. And I expect it to get even more better. More better? Better. It's gonna get better. I also read, I can make up words if I want. Michael Beckwith has a book on visioning. I don't know if we've seen that. He's got some CDs in there, and it's really great. It's a workbook. Life Visioning Workbook. He also had similar description of the 4 stages of our evolution of our souls. And the first stage he calls, and we know this in Radical Forgiveness, which is going on right now, Carol and I, victim consciousness. That's when things are done to me, with the understanding that we move from that to the understanding that we have dominion over the thought process itself. We can learn consciously how to use the law of attraction. We talk about the laws every week because they're always functioning. We're in a sea of consciousness that is always giving us back what we are feeling and thinking into it. That's why it is so imperative for us to be clear on what we're feeling, in what mode we're operating on, so that we can clear that away. That's why the children are planting seeds into the soil and then get the effect of the flower of the seed they planted. That's what we do with our feelings. That's what we do with our thoughts. So the third stage Beckwith calls the channel consciousness. That's where we become a vehicle, an instrument, through which life itself has its way with us. And in stage 1, we view things as happening to me. Stage 2, we grew, evolved to make things happen by me, so we're doing it. That's kind of our second stage of striving mode. It feels more cumbersome. Now stage 3, we allow things to happen. This is all Michael Beckwith. Through me, so it's happening through me. A greater good is now operating through me. And then we move, in his book, into the 4th stage, which is being consciousness. Absolutely being the thing. Where he says life is happening as me. As me. So we very rarely get into that that mode of as me. But every once in a while we might get a glimmer of it. And that's when we feel totally fulfilled. That's when we feel that there is a powerful good and it's working through me. I can feel it right here, right now. That is where we want to stay most of the time. But we have to remember we're having a human experience. So in a human experience, we go in and out of all 4 of these stages. But we don't want to stay stuck in those first 2. We want to always return to the striving, not the striving, the thriving mode. That's where we really want to be. So there's a story about a remote monastery perched high on a cliff, several hundred feet in the air. It's an absolutely beautiful place, and people come from all over the world just to feel this serenity, this peace, this love, this beauty that is there. It has this widespread reputation, and people come for the sacred energy. there's just one problem in visiting this place. All the folk who want to visit it, the only way to reach it is to be suspended in a basket, which is then hoisted by several monks physically. They're pulling up. They're pulling up the rope. They're tugging up with all their strength to get this basket up the mountain so that you can visit the monastery. One day a tourist was in this basket and got exceedingly nervous. Halfway up, he noticed that the rope that they were traveling up in this basket was getting frayed, and it was like only a strand left. And really just hanging by this thread. And so with a really trembling voice, he asked one of the monks who was in the basket with him, riding with him, how often do they change the rope, you know? And the monk said with that very matter-of-factly, whenever it breaks. Sometimes, though, it's pertinent to this whole talk, sometimes it feels like we're hanging by a thread. Yes? Yeah. You ever have that experience in your life?
Oh, yeah.
And the rope is ready to break at any moment? That's the mode of being in survival. That is survival where, oh, you're just hanging on for dear life, it feels like. When you're in this mode, you don't really think about an absolutely beautiful life, do you? No, you're thinking about how to pay the next bill, how to get through whatever situation you're going through, how to survive this situation, this experience. And it's a pretty scary place to be in. And there is a great, great, great temptation when in this mode to ask the question, why me? That's when we're in the why me? Why me? Life seems to be happening to me. You feel powerless, a victim of circumstance. And all we can see is how life failed me. Life failed me. When we have this why me attitude, we believe I am the way I am because of what life has done. Or we might even blame God. There are some people that do this. We might blame God. God is testing me. This is a test of my strength. God has abandoned me. Or even, and this is like the worst, I think, God is punishing me. I did something wrong and I'm being punished. Move out of that whole way of thinking because you might have been brought up in that kind of an atmosphere. Well, we don't believe in a punishing God. We believe in a God of love. So that always comforts me, knowing, as Rita knows and I know, God has my back. All of the time, knowing that there's a powerful good that you are a part of, that you will always be a part of. It's eternal. That powerful good has your back all of the time. Even when you're in that surviving mode. This stage of beingness is actually a state of deep sleep. We're not aware. We're not awake yet. So I know that everyone in this room is waking up, if you're not fully awake, to the fact that there is this powerful good. Just the fact that we create and choose our own futures. By our thinking, by our emotions. We go into that law and it comes back to us as we believe. As Barry believed. We were going to raise that certain amount and we did. Because he believed it the moment it came out of his mouth. That's the number he came up with and he believed it. Thank you for that belief system, Barry. We're very happy about that. So we may have an inkling that there is something better, something greater, because it's that part of us that always knows, that truth within us, that there is something good that's waiting for us. We might not be aware of it, and we might not be connected with it when we're in this surviving mode, because we're too busy trying to keep our heads up over the water. If you feel like you're in this mode this morning, I want to speak to you, and just to you. And my heart is with you, so please hear this. Just hear this. It's the way of spirit. The master teacher Jesus once made a promise, and we call the master teacher Jesus. Come to me, all who are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. That's all we have to know. Ernest Holmes talks about this statement in his book, This Thing Called You, one of my favorite books by him. He wrote, "The world starves in the midst of plenty," hear this, "weeps in the midst of joy. Yet the eternal manna has never ceased to fall. The fields of God are ripe unto a harvest. The garden of your mind was planted by a supreme wisdom to yours. Enter in and accept this promised land." So listen within. "When you accept this with simple faith, you will receive. When you knock in childlike belief, the door will be open. What you seek with enthusiastic acceptance, you will find." So this statement that Jesus made, "Come to me, all who are heavy laden, and I will give you rest," has not changed. It will always be. There is a power for good that is always supporting us. What changes is our belief, our knowing, our trusting. That we change and deepen into. The fact that this power for good is always there is an absolute. It's the truth. So now we move into the mode of striving. So you raise a glass of water and you ask, how heavy is this? How heavy is this water? The reality is, it doesn't matter how heavy the glass of water is or what it weighs. It depends on how long you hold it. If you hold it for an hour, you will have an ache in your arm. If you hold it for a day, you would probably have to call an ambulance. It's the exact same weight though in the water, but how long are you holding on to it? Remember the heavy laden. "Come unto me, heavy laden, I will give you rest." This is somewhat in the mode of striving and what it feels like. It can feel this way because it is likened to the idea of buy me. Remember we talked to me, buy me. We're now in the buy me, so it's by me, through my sheer force, through my control, through my manipulating, through my willpower, I can make life work. I'm gonna really make it work. Anyone ever been in that mode? As we give up blame, as we leave the idea that I am a victim of circumstance, that life is happening to me, that one, we begin to see life is happening by me. That's the next one. We start to move to the second mode of operating, this evolution that Michael Beckwith described. To me, by me, through me, and as me. As we enter into this new thought from the why me stage, we begin to see the incredible power of our thoughts and the choices that we make. In the by me, we just begin to see that we can take responsibility. We don't have to, but it serves us to take responsibility for our lives, to take responsibility. And that means our thinking, to be responsible. Our thoughts, our beliefs, even though they're in the subconscious, we continuously work to clear them out so that we can experience more of the good that life has for us. Here we begin to realize and develop our creative capacities. As in the reading that Patty so beautifully read, we each have a unique gift that only we can express as us in the world. No one else can do it. We begin experimenting sometimes when we get into this second mode of creating those parking spaces, which I have yet to master, but we people have this great, I'm going to create a parking spot. And they always do. I mean, that's really great, but I want to create the new car to go into the parking spot. Move it up a little bit. We learn that our thoughts can create our experience, but it's good to do because you're seeing the outcome, the effect is kind of like, wow, this really works, this law of attraction stuff that they talk about really works. Well, it does work. It's our conscious use of it. That's how much it works or how little it works for us in our lives. Learning how to influence our circumstances and conditions in our lives by our attitudes, our thoughts, and our beliefs, and our emotions. So this state, the second state, is driven by a sense of personal will and personal power. You grasp for things you think you desire, grasping for them, not just letting them flow. You don't dare relax, because God forbid you relax. Who's gonna think of all these things? Who's gonna constantly be trying to manipulate and controlling? And you're doing it all within yourself. That's how crazy we all are, because we're all insane. You do know that, right? Each and every one of us, we are insane. The stories and the things that we play out in our lives, really, we are totally insane. We live in a world of insanity, but that's another talk. So we start thinking, well, next time I do this, I'll try to control it better. I failed because I was not in full control. What was I thinking? Or I failed because my thinking and my consciousness was wrong. What's wrong? And then we get into this one. What's wrong with my consciousness? Ever been there? I call that the spiritual guilt stage. That's when, okay, we're learning this, we got it, this stuff is good, I'm loving it, it's a whole new way of being, and then things go wrong. Or look like they're going wrong. And you're like, whoa, what was I thinking? What was I feeling? What was my emotional state that I created this? You know, let it go. It is. So that's when we go into that isness place. It is what it is. What are you going to do about it now? What are you going to think about it? What are you going to feel about it? Because the now part, which is like past already, so it's always, you know, it's never really now, but it is. We think it's now. So it's now, because now is gone, right? It's the eternal now. All right. So, it really is. But the whole point is how we respond to what's going on in our lives, how we think, how we feel about it. That's what's going to create our next future moment. So, and while striving is a lot more powerful place to be in than surviving, it's still often stressful. And it's like holding that glass, and it gets heavier and heavier and heavier. This is not the place we want to stay at for too long. Although, like I said, we go in and out of all of them. So I have a story of Nasruddin, who was from India, and he saved up to buy a new shirt. He went to the tailor shop and full of excitement, because he's going to get this new shirt made. The tailor measured him and said, "Come back in a week, and your shirt will be ready for you. It will be magnificent. It will be ready." So the mullah contained himself for a week and then went back in that week to get his shirt. "There has been a delay," the tailor said. "If Allah wills, your shirt will be ready tomorrow." The following day, Nasruddin returned. "I'm sorry," said the tailor, "but it is not quite finished right yet. Come back tomorrow. If Allah wills, it will be ready." "How long would it take?" the exasperated Nasruddin said, "if we leave Allah out of it?" That, my friend, that is the striving mode. There is no place for God in the striving mode, because we think we're going to control it all. Where does God fit in there? We're a higher power, whatever you want to call God. I call God God, but you can call it whatever you want. If you feel that you are in this mode this morning, I want to speak to you, just you, for a second. I understand how much work it takes to try to control, to try to manipulate, to try to get things to happen. Been there, done that. It really is like holding that glass for an hour. It's heavy, it's stressful, it's tiring. There's a better way and a more joyous way. that I'm going to briefly talk about today is the way of the Spirit. It's the mode of thriving. Even the word itself, we saw the movie Thrive. Thriving is a wonderful, wonderful word. We are moving into that mode of thriving, and that is our goal over the next 4 weeks. Because that now moment this morning is already passed. We're in a new one. So now we have 4 weeks left of really delving into thriving. And this is the step of it happening through me, or taking it a step further as me. It's happening through me. You can feel Spirit moving through me. You know, when you say this stuff like, thank you, God, I know this is the power for good that is working. This is God working. I didn't do it. It was God. You know, that's when we're starting to move into that thriving mode. When that God is within each and every one of us, because we're all individualized expressions of the oneness, of the unity of life itself. So all of that good is within us, but we have to know that. And we have to allow it. We don't even have to know how to use it. We just have to allow it. Got to take a breath and just let it be. And everything happens for a reason. Everything happens for my spiritual growth. Just to know that. My growth. A Sunday school teacher asked her group of children if anyone could quote the entire 23rd Psalm. A golden-haired, 4.5-year-old little girl raised her hand. She was one of the ones that really raised her hand. So a bit skeptical, the teacher invited her up to give her interpretation and recite it. And the girl very nicely, bowed. And she said, "The Lord is my shepherd, and that's all that I want." I think that is one of the best interpretations of the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, and that's all I want. That's all we have to know. That's all we have to know. Release and let God, really. When we thrive, we realize we are never, never alone. Like I said, we might be physically alone, but we are never alone because we have a divine companion. We're always in divine relationship. It's up to us to cultivate that relationship. It's a much more powerful way of operating on this planet. I'll tell you right now, much more powerful. You have a divine support system. That's the truth. You have to continuously remember that. We know that the presence and power that created all the universes is available to each and every one of us right here, right now, supporting us and allowing us to manifest our greatest good. If we yet but believe, trust, and then know. When you know, that's when you declare it. And the law reacts to that. It responds instantly to that. You see it in people who are so successful. They believe. They believe in a certain thing, and the law has to. The law of God has to give it to them. We all know that God works through us. So according to our willingness to listen and follow, there's a guidance that we receive. You hear that voice within. Listen to it. Listen to it. Cultivate your knowledge through meditation of what that voice within really is saying, because you will get divine guidance. In through me, we give up personal control and continually ask for guidance to bring about only that which is our highest and best for all concerned. We're in a thriving mode all the time, most of the time. Ernest Holmes talks about, because we go, like I said, cut yourself a break. I have to cut myself a break. Because we're in and out of all of these modes of operating. Sometimes it feels like surviving. Sometimes it feels like striving. But I tell you, it sure feels a whole lot better when we're in that thriving mode. But we go in and out. So it's okay, as long as we continuously turn to the power for good. That's the important part. Don't hold the glass of water too long. The law, here's Ernest Holmes, he writes this in his Science of Mind. The law of God is one of liberty, not one of bondage. The Spirit of the Lord is everywhere. Freedom, like truth, is self-existent and self-propelling. The Spirit, truth, and freedom are co-existent with each other. Whenever we are conscious of God, a pure spirit, we are made free. Whenever we're conscious of spirit, really conscious, really feel it operating, we feel the freedom. It feels good. John Randolph Price, whose incredible abundance book, The Genie, so wonderfully sends out the quote still. I think we're on 140 something times, days, because we've been doing it continuously. It's 10 days, but we've been doing it for I don't know how long. 2 months? 101?
32.
We're on day 132. I'm still going strong. It's good. But this is from another book called The Jesus Code, which I really love. Isn't that good? Love that book. He writes, God, now take this in, this is beautiful. God expresses itself as me, and I eternally live in God with God, as the Spirit of God. The fullness of the Godhead dwells in me and expresses through me as every good and perfect thing. I am a channel for positive change in the world. I recognize my value as an individual being living on earth at this time. As the very worthiness of God, I am part of the grand plan of continuing creation. And my contribution to the world is vitally important in the divine scheme of things. And he continues, poised, powerful, and peaceful. I do not part with love and joy. I am guiltless, open, and receptive to right action, and devoted to my purpose in life. Everything I do is meaningful and worthwhile. I am free because I know who I am. Because I know who I am. Your perfect expressions, each and every one of us, is a perfect expression of God. That's what we are. Of His infinite intelligence, this expansive, limitless potentiality that His Spirit is the truth of who we are. Deepen, keep deepening, deepening. So you open yourself up when you're in that place. You open yourself up to experience more of this God self. And it feels so good. It feels so free. That's the mode of thriving that we want to attain and be in as often as possible. And even if we slip back into the other two modes, we know it exists because we've already experienced thriving. So we go back to that and know that we're ever spiraling upward, up, up, up. Perfect song. We're spiraling upward into that connection with this powerful good that is there to support us in every single thought, emotion, experience if we but turn inward and connect. So I look forward this month to thriving with each and every one of you. And so.